For those who are just joining us now, we are now moving into hour 10 of the Connectathon. And one of the things I want to take as that red thread over from the previous hour was, instead of us organizing the world around ourselves or organizing ourselves to the world, I love that, Alexander. How is it that we could evolve as nature? Because in reality, that is what we are. So as we take that into our next conversation, where we're going to talk about cities, we're going to talk about how is it possible for us to take what we've just talked about, that relationship with one another and with the more than human world, into the places where we as humans mostly seem to gather, where we live, where we play, where we raise our families, where we do the jobs that we do, and we contribute to the world together. How do we make that places where we truly thrive? And when I say we thrive, I mean we, everything we're a part of, all of nature that we're a part of. How together can we thrive? Is there a way for us as humans to start to understand ourselves in relationship to everything else and each other in a way that allows us to flourish? Um, Seeing that at the moment we find ourselves in a place. So I think I remember when we started, Alexander, myself, Tim, a number of others, when we started this Connectathon, it was this idea of, could we imagine, could we look at where we find ourselves now, and where we would like to be, and what we would need to do in this moment to change the trajectory of where it looks like we're going as a civilization? And it was the impetus for starting to have these connectathons, right? So today I'd like to introduce you to some people that I asked to join me today in this conversation, people that I've gathered in my own life across time of being together here. And so I ask every one of you actually to join. This is not going to be a conversation just held by those that I invited specifically to be here, but I'd like it to be a conversation that we have together, because after all, it affects all of us. Most of us live in a house somewhere, right? Some of us were in a boat, I remember earlier, or in various different places. But essentially, we have some form of a home, right? And it is generally situated at the moment on planet Earth. So I'd like to say, how do we organize? How do we? So I want to. I'm going to introduce you to a few of my colleagues, and I'm not going to give you the illustrious how can I say, resumes, because really they're amazing, right? But so are the rest of you here. So I would say I invited my friend Lucille, who likes to talk to animals and humans, and often inspires me greatly with lots of wonderful insights that she has listening into the frequency and the energy around us. So thank you, Lucille, for being here today and joining us in this conversation. I also invited my dear friend Lev Gordon, who works with me in Living Cities Earth and was one of the original founders, together with Alexander and a number of others. Kim Chappell works also with us in Living Cities Earth. And we have Anton Apparin over here, also joining us, working as part of our GM Global Mayors Academy team in Living Cities Earth. And I have my friend Susie, whom I met in the Connectathon, one of the first Connectathons. So, and yes, she is all these years later now planning it with everyone. And Gavin Sher, also we met through various circumstances, but thank you for joining me in this conversation, Gavin. I did say, hey guys, I need your help. I need you to come out this conversation with me because I'd been so busy planning things in Living Cities that I'd forgotten that I need to have this conversation. And here you all are, and I love you so much for this. And then in the last minute, I said, Michael, please bring that beautiful voice of yours in here too. And so I'm so happy Alexander's here too, and Alejandra as well. Thank you so much. And everyone else that's maybe I'm not seeing on the screen, but thank you so much. Please feel free to unmute yourself at any point and to weave in your part into the story. So I want to start by inviting you, I would say, to respond to a question of, what do you think, what are you experiencing as the real felt challenges in our cities today? What are we facing? What are some of the things that we experience and feel that we think is, or that you experience as something that really challenges you? It's either what you observe or something you experience in yourself, right? We're going to start there. So I would like to start by inviting my friend Lev first, and then from there, anyone unmute yourself and just keep going with the conversation. Thank you, Lev.
Thank you. How is the sound? Do you hear me well enough?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, it was interesting. I was thinking of raising the hand, but then I thought, oh, I'm sure there are so many other people who could share their story. So I didn't raise my hand, and immediately, Ariel,
I was just listening
you
to
called upon me.
vibes.
Well, it's very interesting. I had two amazing sort of instances of experiencing what you are talking about. What are the challenges, right? I just listened to the podcast from the governor of Oregon, the state in the upper left corner of the United States. The president of the United States is sending the army, right, to do certain work, which the governor, the mayor, and the citizens believe there is no work to be done. They don't need the army here. So it's just one sample of what could happen, right? So different perspectives from different levels of governance within the city, in the region, on the national scale. Of course, there are many other countries in the world which have some sort of similar type of governance related issues. And another instance, I woke up today at 4:30 in the morning because I was participating in a conference about the future of the cities. And the opening slide was talking about the crisis that could affect all of humanity. Not even the meta crisis, but sort of the existential catastrophe. And Alexander, I'm sure several others might know about this research. There was a global study made with hundreds of experts about how they perceive what's the probability of this existential crisis when either all of humanity could disappear from the planet or 1 billion plus, so the second level, less sort of existential, or 1 billion plus people could disappear due to many different reasons, right? Sort of cosmic forces like asteroids or nuclear sort of powers or ecological. And it's interesting that the consensus estimate is that the probability that we'll have at least the second degree existential crisis when more than 1 billion people could really disappear from this planet is estimated at 16% over the next 10 years. 16%, that's quite high. But over the next 100 years, right, from a variety of those causes, the estimate is about 87%. So in our daily life, of course, none of us is really thinking or living in this state of awareness that something could happen any moment. But it was important, and the discussion in this conference, I will be over in a couple of minutes. Discussion in this conference was really going towards how we could create cities which would serve uh, our, let's call it, evolutionary mission, right, of being representatives of cosmic consciousness within this, human form. As we evolve as global species, as the nature, right, with the nature and in many different forms, in view of those internal crises which happen in my first example in a human realm, but also in this more global context. And I guess my point, which I want to make now before passing it on to the next speaker, is that there are certain things we could do to address those potential crises or even national type of crises as citizens, right, as human beings, but also on a daily basis. We meet with, I would call them micro crises in our families, with our children, our parents, our sort of, siblings and spouses, our neighbors, of course, and people across the aisle, as they say in the United States, from different political perspectives, etc. And what I want to bring into our conversation before, again, passing the word to the next speaker, is whatever is the scale of those challenges we face, it all starts in who we are and how we bring ourselves to those situations. Do we address those global sort of cosmic level potential challenges from the place of humility, grace, kindness. And it's the same that we could meet small challenges in our families, right, with our neighbors, with other sort of groups in the society. So that's, I guess, my opening statement that the challenges are many, they have been, and they will always be many. So it's not so much about what's the world we are living in, but who are we in this world. So that's where I would like to stop now. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share. And please, Carol, let me know who would be speaking next. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lev, for starting us off with that. Great food for thought. So I would like to, as I said, I want to, I can call out names for who goes next, but I'd like to invite you to feel your way into the conversation, right? I'd also like to encourage you to put your where you are in the world, where you're coming from at the moment. It helps the rest of us here see who we're talking to, where you're coming from, etc. So just your name or whatever, just put next to it your little town or also country perhaps that you're from. That'd be really great. We're trying to exercise this throughout the Connectathon. But Anton, please, may I invite you to share with us?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm happy to join your field and thank you for invitation, Ferial. And maybe Alexander Laszlo is head of this movement. I'm not sure yet. I'm first time here. But we are on the long path together with Living Cities Earth. So I'm now in Indonesia. I live here for 3 years at the moment, and it's 8 a.m. here in Bali, and I want to share this morning energy with you. This is the first point. And yeah, hello, beautiful people from different parts of the world, and hello, beautiful planet. So, in case of challenges of our society and city, I would follow some things which Lev started about global things which are going on. And we live here, most of us, very close with these numbers, which I want to share with you, but it's really huge numbers. So for last 50 years, our global population raised twicely from 4 billion to 8 billion. And for last 100 years, from 2 billion to 8 billion. Could you imagine those numbers? It's huge kind of stuff. And I personally working for more than 12 years with integral approach kind of stuff related with Ken Wilber and my own spiritual things from Asian countries, Himalayas, etc. And this growing population, it touch all of those things which touch on who we are, our identity, which Lev explained very detailed why it is important. It also touch on the cultural level of how culture grows and how it change in growing of those numbers. And it touch on systems and kind of things and the city and city and regions. This is the field which connect all this complexity in one place. The cultural, the identity, and the systematic challenges about the construction things, about energy, about ecology and pollution. So that's why, from my perspective, to be helpful for cities to be more wealthy and more evolutionary, we make a very huge service to universe, to God, or whatever, how you like it, to Gaia. And, you know, even by statistics, half of our population now at this moment live in the cities. So kind of 4 million. And in next 25 years, it will be 70%. So people like to go deeper in the cities, and cities are more impactful point in this perspective, which making the governance decisions and here in Bali, for example, and I will suggest to next speakers from our team here, from our family, to share some challenges from your place. And I would share just few words of challenges here in Bali related with the cities. So here people like buying pieces of land and make their own, villa or small kind of retreat center or small kind of village, and they don't care what is going on outside of them. So, and in the scale, we have that piece of land is broken by many different pieces which are totally disconnected in architectural way, in cultural way, in meaningful way. So, and very fast, in 10 years, it destroy everything. It destroy nature, it raise cultural crises here, and even the clients of this kind of stuff, the people who came here in Bali and bought something and built something, they also facing with those negative effects of doing things like this way. And in my imagination, and it also related with some researches and numbers, we can see that this growing population is destroying and damaging, even by construction, all of our world, Gaia, by building new cities, new parts of the cities everywhere. So people need to live somewhere, work somewhere. So we make a lot of construction, and part of my own interest, maybe few of you know about this, and it's part of LCE. We call it integral real estate development. So how we can build more consciously, how we make architecture, how we connect it with meaning, with community, and with better technologies in one place. So yeah, and we are in this point, and as an LCE, we are trying to support how we can, and we're growing now. So it's like near the 3 years of LCE globally movement, and we're trying to support it by education, by building a community, and by building a specific programs and projects around that. And now we are working on integral real estate development at one point, and also another one big project and initiative is Global Mayors Academy to connect city leaders and share with them more holistic vision. And maybe few of our colleagues will share a little bit more about that. Yeah, so thank you. There are a lot of challenges, and I will agree with Lev that from our identity, all the things start growing. But this identity could be not only in personal, but also in collective thing. And we need to be capable to face those challenges in related with technologies and systematic kind of stuff, which are also really complex. Yeah, I finish here. Peril, I will pass in to you, and please share everyone where you are and which challenges in your place you're facing mostly. Is my suggestion.
Thank you so much, Anton, for sharing a little bit more about, how you're viewing the crises that we're experiencing in the world. So with that, I want to add one statistic. In the last 40 years, many of you have heard that, but I wanted to sink in. So in the last 40 years, due to our human activity on this planet and other factors, we have lost more than 50% of our wildlife, according to WWF. 50% of our wildlife in 40 years. That's big. So Anton mentioned stats about how we, kind of grew from 2 billion to 4 billion to 8 billion. And so I'm saying to you, so think about this. If in 40 years we've lost 50% of our wildlife, what happens in the next 10 or 20 or 30 years, right? If we don't become responsive to our environment in the ways that it's asking us to do now, right? So that said, who would like to go next and share a little bit more about how you're experiencing and viewing what is happening around us, where you find yourself in the world? Gavin, would you like to go for us next? Thank you.
Thank you, Farrell, and very nice to see you all. This time I'm a little tired, kind of my brain's a little bit like, but I feel incredibly blessed not to live in a city. It's a strange question to contemplate at the moment because I never really wanted to live in cities. I think, quite an energetically sensitive human being and very sensitive to noise and very sensitive to just kind of the vibe of a place. And I lived in Cape Town for 14 years and Joburg before that. I grew up. And so I've not really lived in too many cities, but overdevelopment constantly came up as like a real issue for me with everything that goes with it, the traffic, the noise, the lack of space. It just always felt very inhuman to me and very got to escape from here sort of feeling. But cities generally, I just for me, I kind of just look at so much as a so much of a product of the people within it. I feel like cities could be just so amazing if everyone in it was, kind of awake and aware and expressing their gifts. There'd be like it would be just a buffet of amazingness around every corner. There'd be something interesting, and one could really enjoy just connecting with the people around you, and every person you meet could be like just such a surprise and a gift. But instead, often it's just meeting one angry, irritated human being after another, and the general disconnection. I think just disconnection would probably be my biggest issue with the cities I've been in. Johannesburg, it sounds is a lot like Bali. Just a sprawling expanse of people walled in and walling away from one another. And Cape Town, even though in some ways it's kind of set up like a series of villages, is just so disconnected. And to walk through a street and have just an assault of people who are kind of avoiding one another. Like beggars in Africa are just such a daily reality, where if you walk down the street in Cape Town, like 10, 15, 20 people from the time you open your door, like from, if you just go an hour, you'll have that many people just in some ways often assault you for money, or when you just constantly face moment after moment, day after day with the traumas that people are feeling. You have to kind of disconnect. You can't engage with everyone. You can't have empathy every moment for everyone. It becomes too much, and how people engage in that can be very hectic. So it's again, I'm quite glad not to be there. I mean, that's basically kind of my bottom line. And I think the potential of what cities could be versus the ones I've experienced. I mean, in Cape Town, they still dump all the sewage into the ocean. I mean, it's one of the most amazing places, and you have this like rampant, it's just terrible. It's like, how can that happen in such a place? So yeah, I just look forward to seeing it done better. I'd like to see that integral city. I'd like to see city full of people who are excited and yeah, just glad for life. It will be a change.
Thank you for sharing, Gavin. I remember going to dinner with you after one of these Connectathon meetings, actually, we had in Cape Town a few years ago with Susie as well. And I remember having this conversation with you because we had some beggars that were accosting us or something. I remember this. And we were just talking about how could we help everyone, and how we had to battle with that we couldn't. And but this is the realities we face in cities. And then they are not only in cities, because there are all kinds of challenges. So I would say the places where we live, the places where we find ourselves, whether they are in compact cities or whether they are in the countryside. Earlier on in another meeting, we talked about how perhaps people that live in the countryside feel less affected by a lot of this. But on this past weekend, I was in Romania, and we were in the countryside and very much on a small holding. I think I shared with the rest of you all this produce around me. It was just wonderful, right? And I was wondering, wow, if this could be in a city. But essentially, as I was listening to my in-laws talking, they live in the countryside, but they were having this major conversation, a lot of which I didn't understand because it was in Romanian, but the bits that was translated for me was how they too are being affected by decisions made by their politicians, by certain things. So people in the countryside are not unaffected. Yeah. That said, I would like to invite Susie next. Would you share? I know you live in the forest, but but I'm sure there are challenges that you're facing in that forest because of decisions that are being made, right? So thank you, Susie.
Thanks, Farrell. Well, right now I'm in Cape Town for a little while, but yes, I live in Hogsback in the Eastern Cape in the forest. And it's quite interesting listening to you, especially Gav and Lev. It's 2 years ago I left Cape Town, and I had grown up in cities, Johannesburg, and then spent a number of years in Cape Town, and then off to the forest. And I arrived solo and with a completely new beginning where I only knew one person. So my new beginning, I could go in with a new lens into a new community and observe from ground level up of what was going on. And that's been the unfolding of the last couple of years, in awe, watching and being part of literally a community where you talk about suburbs. This is almost like one suburb or one neighborhood, which is big farm areas, but it is run under one umbrella. And there are just as much issues in the village life as there are in the city life. And as Lev said, I totally agree. It starts from the inside out. Because if you've got integrity in people, you've got integrity in whether it's a neighborhood, a village, a city. It's a collective, integral environment where you work and communicate together. And I think the big thing that I've seen is there is a split. There's a split that those who are connected with the earth and that are evolving with the land, and you can see it so clearly. And then you can see the other half, which is still in the old governing ego mindset, where it's more consumerism and it's the disconnect with nature. So I live in a village where we're surrounded by pine forests, which is a working business. And here is this indigenous forest in the middle. So we have the old world of running around the nature hub that we're in. And it's really been, it's been quite an adventure finding my feet within myself, within this diverse essence of a community in the middle of the forest, the middle of literally nowhere, and be the difference. And at its essence, I have seen and am part of the difference. We've got a talk tomorrow, I think, hour 23, where San and I are talking about living and creating intentional community. And it's a real thing, no matter where you go. Cities and villages are run by people. And when now I believe we're in a state where there is awareness, there is growth, there is consciousness coming in. So there's this new wave coming through where differences are definitely being made. And communication's been the barrier, like where it's been the disconnect. And in a village, it's quite interesting, everybody trying to be heard, and some not listening and others listening. So I honestly, truly believe that there has been a shift. I honestly and truly believe that when people start doing the inner work, it absolutely expands into the outer world. And I do believe with these conversations, just with the Connectathon, look how much change is going on with these beings. One being at a time is going to change this world, and it can be done. It's just stay in your own lane and observe rather than react. Stick to your stuff that you know that you're becoming a better person, a better connection with nature, a better representation of our new world that we are creating. We are the new world. We hold the new world frequencies. And so we can observe the old world as it is now with this spark and this light within our hearts, knowing that we are changing, and that's why we're here. So it is possible.
And Susie, I love I always remember what you would say. It's an inside job. I remember that, right? So,
and it's a true story.
it's a true story. You're not lying. So you know what? I want to change a little bit of gears as we move forward with the next part of the conversation and look at how are these challenges, because we know that they are nested challenges. They're one feeds the other, right? And how are they nested intergenerationally, socially, economically, ecologically? Let's talk about some of that. What do we sense into that? And with that, I want to invite Lucille. You know, what are we feeling about that? Please, Lucille. Unmute yourself first so we can hear you.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
We can, indeed.
Yeah, so I think the first part I was looking at how the consciousness, you know, the real problem for me around the cities is how the collective consciousness of people kind of evolved the city, and the energy of the people were found in every brick and every building, and you know, so basically it was formed and evolved. And I kind of looked at you know, seeing the dissonance, you know, within a person's energy and their dis-ease, how it's projected into the cities, and how we can look at the cities, and just by observing the cities we can actually kind of lean into energetically what is the problem within the person itself. So the two kind of mirrored each other. And then I kind of just wrote a few things down. This all kind of leaned into how separate we were becoming with our original divine blueprint as well. So there was all revealed in the cities. So intergenerationally, so children and future city dwellers move into resonance with the energetic field of the city, becoming more and more disconnected from the original divine blueprint. So more variety is achieved through even more inventive solutions. So people just inventing different solutions. And so as impressive and appealing as this may seem, it does pose to a true solution and does not lead to a true solution. Sorry if this is making sense. I'm just reading off the script, sorry. So socially, I wrote, people's values become fragmented, disrupting communities. And this disruption causes people to grow more divided, more isolated, and ultimately more in dis-ease. And economically, people fear the idea of less is more. The fear distorts the fabric of their internal reality. And the more they appear to acquire, the less connection they feel with the divine blueprint, which is ultimately the true currency. And the next section was ecologically. So this is close to my own heart. I have been able to hear the narrative of the lands and feel the dissonance deep within the fabric of the earth. Cities hold a collective consciousness that no longer align with the natural systems. The earth feels this polarity. The earth feels this polarity and a kind of resentment towards the man-made structures that disregard living life in harmony and balance. The further you move away from cities, the more the harmony becomes possible. The less natural the cities become, the more obvious the separation is.
Thank you very much. So essentially, what I hear you say is that the more we progress, the more we regress, because we move away from being nature. Because we create these structures and ways of being that that again does not keep us connected to what is the design of nature for us and everything else. So thank you very much for sharing that, Lucille. And I'd like to invite Michael to speak into that a little bit. Like, what are some of the thoughts that are coming up for you as we talk about this?
Fortunately, I've forgotten what the question was, so I'm just going to say the first three things that I've just made some notes on. The first note I put down was that this meeting began at 1 a.m. And I looked back at it and thought, I am. Did I really write that? And that's the position from which I'm probably coming in this sort of perception. So the first problem I see is the word city. If it's really, as Anton was saying, going to cover 70% of the world's population, we probably need a lot of different words that cover all the different layers and scales and all that. And then Leva was talking about the scale of the problems. I think we need to address the scale of the cities. And in terms of, because of their proportionality within countries. I mean, I saw Dublin go from being a rural community to then start receiving European grants and becoming the European tiger. And suddenly half the population of Ireland is living in Dublin because that's where the money is. Now, when you, Ferial, said that that you raised this question about whether rural people understand what's going on, I wrote a paper because I live in the countryside 40-something years ago that was called "The City Sucks Because They're a Load of Bankers." And it's a double entendre. But if you imagine the capacity of the country is the tablecloth, they're sitting exactly on a table, not an old Victorian one that goes down and hides the legs for all sorts of social embarrassments and so forth. The tablecloth that sits on the table is the capacity of that country. Now you start a city with a bank in it, a central bank, a capital city, you lift the tablecloth. And suddenly you realize all the edges haven't got any tablecloth anymore. It all gets sucked. So having lived on the edge of Wales, about as far from London as you can get, I've seen that. And it's not only young people disappearing because they think they're going to get a job, it's all the agricultural produce. Then a supermarket comes in because we're not growing our own food anymore. The supermarket sends all its money back to head office. It's like every single aspect of this is about a suck from the countryside of the town. And it's all part of an economic system which isn't going to survive much longer. So we're going into a different perspective where right at this moment, there are 209 central banks in the world that are all recalibrating on a gold backing. They're not going to work with the Federal Reserve anymore. So every single country is going to have its own currency, which means we're diminishing the clawback from those places. The suck is not going to be as strong, and it will get smaller and smaller and smaller. So I think the cities of the future are going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. I don't think we're going to have any reason for people to be, and this sits very well with me because there is an administrative anomaly with cities, which means they are consuming far more people than rural communities do, which means they're disproportionately consuming resources to satisfy administration, which isn't necessary in smaller. Now, after this conversation began and you all started talking about the cities you live in, I thought, my God, I was actually born in a city. I completely discounted it. And now you're going to hear why. Because that city I was born in has grown and grown and grown out of all recognition. It now has 3,000 people in it. Yeah, 3,000. It's about 1,000 people when I was born, and it's a city. So here in Wales, we've got three of the smallest cities. I went shopping last week. I went to my nearest city. It's 6,000 people. We have three cities in Wales that are probably the three smallest cities in the world. You know, there are other things down at the bottom that are city metropolitan boroughs. They're very different as far as we're concerned. So if you've heard of Newport, Swansea, Cardiff, they're metropolitan boroughs. We've got three cities, and the smallest of them is St. David's with 1,700 people to this day. You know, it's got a cathedral, it's got a mayor, it's got everything you'd expect a city to have. And so very different perceptions. And so I'm sort of making the case for what we understand as size, what that scale is doing, what we're calling those things. And if we're going to pick up the thread that Alexander was suggesting from the previous conversations, then the I am of me is asking myself, when I'm a planet, where's that city sitting? When I'm a city, where am I sitting on the planet? And I do this kind of thing. I go in a city and I become the city. So I've spent, when I was training as an architect, I spent a week walking around Rome just to get an understanding of who it was, where it was, and so forth, and Dublin and Paris and Barcelona. And just to spend weeks just being with that place. But I spend much more time, because I've spent my whole life living in the countryside, I spend much more time talking to Archangel Guyana about what it is to have those things sitting on me as a planet, you know. And in terms of resource consumption, administration, and overabundance of resources. So when I'm walking around Barcelona, I'm loving the total sort of vivacity of the place. You know, it's like it's all street restaurants, but this is a very small proportion. We've got enormous, what do you call them, ghettos and so forth, surrounding every city in the world. It's a disproportionate understanding of what it is. So I'm just looking at all of this in terms of the weight on the planet, the weight on the population who end up there who didn't want to be there, they'd rather be in a rural situation, so on. So all kinds of negative hypotheses, if you like, not necessarily things I can give you a quantity for, but just thoughts.
Thank you, Michael. Now,
What was the
I know
question?
we had a conversation about this before, how we see also that as this is happening, the experience you've just talked about, a lot of young people are becoming very disillusioned with how they can express themselves within those cities. And they're obviously reacting to this in different ways. Some are moving to the countryside, but others are also really becoming totally disengaged with their societies. And the question now is, how do we look at that? So we're going to talk about all those things in a moment, but I want to give Alejandra a chance as well to maybe input, if you'd like to, Alejandra, just about some thoughts you may have on this. Now, we've been doing a bit of downery stuff at the moment, so I'm going to kind of switch up the gear after Alejandra and just move it into a little bit more positivity, right? But we were just trying to feel our way into what we experience and see around us happening. Alejandra, please.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me to share. I was thinking about the speed of the cities growing, and I was thinking about Mexico City, that it's one of the most bigger cities in the world. And I was looking in Google, and it's like when I was born, you know, the numbers from now, it's just so crazy. And my experience is that I was thinking, how was in 1972? Which were the numbers in 2021, and then now, and it's like it's difficult to realize when you are inside the cities how complex and chaotic they become within the time, because people just have to adapt to the changes within the cities. So yeah, the exercise of making zoom out, understand from a different perspective, it's critical to see where we want to go and how we can deal with that complexity. It's because the problem, in my experience, coming from a big city, now I am living in Victorian Canada, but my experience of being there in this process, it's like it's unmanageable, and you pass from complexity to chaos, and that's quite a challenge for the citizens. And when you don't have the opportunity to move out, it's yeah. So that were my thoughts. But in terms of trying to find where to go, something that I find very you know, when I find hope coming back to Mexico and share with people there, is that the capacity of the people to adjust and adapt, it's just amazing. And the creativity that the people have in the city is just becoming bigger and bigger. And when I come back each, time that I go, it's like, wow, I didn't realize this capacity of create in the middle of these difficult challenges. So yeah, we have to find the opportunity to be creative in front of the chaos. It could be my positive contribution to this conversation.
Positive shift, yeah. So thank you for that positive shift. But I want to say that I hear you, Alejandra, because I experienced the same. Having grown up in Cape Town, it's also a very big city, and then now I live in, very much in the countryside, close to a big city, but I live in a beach town, right? So very, very different scenario. So I would say, just thinking about that, when I go back to South Africa and my friends are like, oh my God, you got to do this, you got to do that, because they get held up by gunpoint and this is going on. And I grew up there and this was not the case, right? And I see I don't know how to put it. It's like, it's totally normal for them. The whole thing is totally normal. I mean, I'm looking at this, I'm going, like, it's because it's the whole frog in the pot syndrome, right? You put it into the pot and you keep, turning up the heat, the frog doesn't jump out. The frog just gets boiled because it gets acclimatized slowly to everything that's happening. And I see that happening in a lot of places. So when you're outside of it and you're viewing it, you're going, oh my God, can you not see what's going on? And I guess this is the point, right? And slowly that even starts affecting more and more and more. But coming back to what you said, there's also the positive part of that, which is the adaptability, the resilience, I suppose. And if we were to, to put that into a way that we could use that energy positively, then we could change that trajectory and not just be the frogs in the pot, right? So that said, I want to change the gear now for us to talk a little bit more about what would cities that truly support thrivability look like, feel like, smell like, sound like. So let's take it to that gear. And then with that, let's talk about our leaders in our cities. Let's talk about our youth in our cities, our future leaders. Let's talk about the kind of roles that we could play in these cities, the kind of things that Alejandra just started bringing up, on how we actually can usher in, how we can be part of that movement of transformation in our cities. But let's also think about what could it look like? What is the vision that we can see, we can some days smell, we can some days feel, of the possibilities. Some of us living in some countryside places and certain things, me going to Romania and just looking at all this produce around me, this fruit. And it's like, oh, imagine this. I said it earlier. What stops our government? I really thought about it. I thought, what stops us from planting fruit trees all along our highways and wherever we are, and that we could just pluck it off? Because I was the entire weekend, I was just eating everything plucked off from the garden. It was fantastic, right? And I asked the question, what stops us? because we want somebody to go buy it at the supermarket, right? Because otherwise we don't have the economy that we think we need to have. But is that the economy we should have? So let's talk about that. Again, we're going to go popcorn style. So a few of you can start. So feel your way into this part of it as well. And then just respond as you naturally, whichever aspect of this is stirring your heart, right? So again, maybe we could go with lifting up your hands and your virtual hands, and I can see who wants to go next. Lev, please go for it.
Thank you very much. So, by the way, sorry for my broken English. I see many native English speakers here from many parts of the world. So for me, it's the second or third language. So apologies if you don't always understand me. It's interesting. I wasn't planning again to speak up now, but then I saw like emoji from Gavin in the chat, in our Zoom chat, and he made like a sad, I guess, emoji. I published the exact numbers for those probability of those existential risk and catastrophic events. So if you're interested, there is more information in the chat along with the sources. But when I saw his emoji, and Gavin, thank you very much. You're not only an amazing speaker, but also a very empathetic human being. So I feel you even across the ocean. I realized that how it seems strange. I'll come back to the positive side as well. It will be the conclusion of my observation. It feels strange to see those numbers that there could be full existential sort of wiped out of humanity or partial with billions of people left. But when I saw this emoji from Gavin, somehow I had the insight, how is it that we could pretty much, let's call it, kill half of the wildlife, as Feral has shared, and not expect something to happen to us as a, as a species, right? As a collective sort of being. So from the quote unquote, how you call it, esoteric, right? Esoteric sort of deeper wisdom traditions, whatever you do, or even in Christian tradition, I guess, whatever you do unto other is what somehow you get back from, from life. So from this perspective, as we observe this, extinction of many wildlife species, etc., it would be only natural to expect. So now let me go to the positive side. So the same way as we do the negative impact, right, we could do the positive. We cannot change the direction of the asteroids, or most likely individually we can't even, influence the probability of nuclear war or other sort of large catastrophic events. But if we think that as within, as sort of without, right, our inner evolution, I think Lucille, or let's see, either Lucille or Susie, I'm sorry, one of you have mentioned this, right? So our inner evolution somehow drives also our collective outer evolution. And this is exactly the principle we try to use in all of our, educational programs, etc., including this Global Mayors Academy and Future Leaders, that it's working with our inner world and our intrapersonal dimension, right, in our communities, in our families, larger sort of society, that by changing the dynamics there, and of course it always starts with becoming aware of what's the current dynamic, right? Do I create crisis within myself? Do I love myself? Do I accept myself? Do I love others, whatever their skin, color or background is, or political, affiliation? So when we introduce this principle of, I call it love, right, sort of full acceptance and kindness, etc., towards ourselves, our close circle, and then we grow our circle. I think in integral approach, it's called grow up, as you accept broader responsibility for the circle of life around you, as we wake up to the deeper, dimensions of life, as we clean up our, inner psychological traumas, etc., then we can show up to manifest our beauty, our creative potential in our cities. And by the city, by the way, we don't mean urban communities, any kind of habitats, right? So I think Michael mentioned this. Cities could come in 1,000 people size, or 1 million people size, or 30 million as Mexico, I guess, more or less. But also smaller communities like eco or intentional communities. They are small cities from our perspective, so it's not about those administrative sort of dimensions. So let me again finish with one specific point. So the hope lies is that as we lived life, not us, of course, personally, but many people on this planet for centuries, more or less in a less aware fashion, right? Without consciously being present to who we are, how we interact with other people, with the rest of the nature, as Ferial told me, not with nature, but with the rest of the nature. Thank you, Ferial. So as we grow more aware, and the crises, of course, they help us increase our awareness, right? Without crises and challenges, most likely we would continue for much longer to live in a sort of darkness in a way. So in a positive sort of spin, all those challenges, even when they seem unsurmountable in the cities as well, there is lack of trust, lack of resources, many different things, destruction of natural ecosystems, etc. But they help us as evolving beings to become more conscious, more accepting, more able to collaborate with each other and with other forms of life. So this is where, for me, hope and also our task lies, to grow the collective sort of consciousness and then to move from awareness to, let's call it, transformative action. Thank you very much, Ferial, and everybody. On to the next sort of speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Liv. I'm always amazed at when you say you hope that we understand your English, because my Russian is, of course, really non-existent. And secondly, I think some days your English is better than mine. So yes, we do absolutely understand it. And thank you, Liv. So one of the statements Liv made there, I remember saying this to Liv, because whenever we're writing, and I don't know if you noticed it, even in our circles, we always talk about nature. But it is actually like Liv would say, and I said, but it's the rest of nature, because we are nature. It's not nature over there and human over here. We're just the rest. They're just the rest of nature, right? So thank you, Liv, for all of that. And yes, absolutely. Like Susie said, it's an inside job. It starts right there. So may I invite the next person that would like to continue the conversation where Liv has just left that off. Please just raise your hand if you'd like to add something here at this point.
I'll jump in. In some ways, I'd be very excited to live in a city if they worked very differently. And, getting rid of the cars for a start would be, for me, a great thing. But for me, it really is about people. It is just a collective of people. And if it were that maybe if people weren't on the same 9-to-5 hamster wheel, if there was much more green spaces and animals and could see the stars, etc., in cities. If that buzz and I forgot the wariness that I experience when I go to especially the cities that I know, where constantly you're on guard and having to be on guard and having to be looking out. It would be such a different experience because, what one misses in the countryside is that opportunity to experience just the incredible different things that people create and the gifts that they bring, and to have, the energy of going to a dance with 1,000 people, or, being able to see the all the different music that different people might bring in different spaces, and so on. And I would imagine just a much more creative and collaborative kind of city where one could just enjoy the different gifts that people have to offer. Like it's funny we say that cities still at the moment are such a intermingling of that. You find those islands of that beautiful heart-based space that brings that you just can go to sometimes in a city, that you find those little gems where people can connect, or where you do get to experience just something unique that you might not have imagined, but there is that person who's devoted their life to that thing, and you walk in and it just is such a gift to everyone around it. And I can only imagine if we lived in environments that nurtured us and sparked us, brought us together. I think it'd be amazing. I'd be very excited to live, maybe, yes, in a very small city like that.
Beautiful. So I can say something about the city that I've lived in for about 18 years, that was Edinburgh. And I actually found it a really great city, to be honest. Like, I found it very safe. So we have cities around the world like this that, things are working a little bit better than in others. I know Edinburgh is home to something we call the Fringe Festival. It is the biggest arts festival on the planet. So if you want to have that party, Gavin, you come to Edinburgh during August and you'll have the party of a lifetime. And I remember living through those parties because I used to organize a lot of bands and things to come to that. So for about 5 years, I just had one big fat party in Edinburgh. Just saying, it was amazing because you did feel safe. You did feel like I could be there all hours of the morning. And as a woman driving places, it's never a problem. And even now it isn't, So what I'm saying is there are those things in certain places. And sometimes when I am in Scotland, that's what I think about. I think about, wow, actually, there are other places in the world where we have the challenges that maybe some of what we also described, myself and Alejandra, about Cape Town and Mexico City. Then there is hope, because at some point in Scotland, it was not that safe and it was not that great. And yet here we are, maybe 50, 100 years later, and things have changed totally because the Scots did something. They responded. They decided, we're going to educate ourselves, our children, going from 4% of people going to university. I think now you have more than 50, 60% of Scottish people going to university. So it becomes a very normal thing. Education has increased. So there's lots of things that change because of those things, that you start to do, and you start having the capacity and capability to do. So again, we find ourselves at a place where, I guess the question that I want us to respond to now is what we can see. Some of us talked about the types of cities that we think that could be really great, right? And I'm not talking about perfect, because is there a perfect city, right? I'm talking about a place where we feel alive, where we feel we can contribute. We feel, someone earlier in one of the sessions said, it's not about being happy, it's about having an internal joy, that you can express yourself authentically. You can, what does it mean for you to be joyful? So I think that my next question to you is, so what is the stuff that, if you think about leadership, and leaders are often the people who are making the laws, helping to shape some of the policies and the ways that our city works. Our cities are places where we live. It's not just cities, but places where we live actually works and functions. So what do you think are the kind of things? Lev started us off a little bit there, but what are the kind of things now? What are the possibilities for us to address that space, that leadership? What needs to happen there? What are some of the things you're thinking about that goes, this could be ways, and if we address this here now, that it could change. We could possibly have the cities that we feel more alive in, and more safe, and more joyful, more peaceful, and all those wonderful things, right? So I'd like to invite you, Alejandra, just to tell me a little bit more about what you think about that.
Thank you very much. Sure. 3 ideas came to my mind. The knowledge that we obtain from challenges. So there is a kind of wisdom to be revealed in those cities that have been passed for those extractive processes of, the resources of nature. And so, it's about calling for, make a call to the experience of being there, but consciously. So the storytelling that we have been taught during this long session today, and the inner job that we have talked to, I think it's critical to reveal this wisdom that we can obtain from there. And the wisdom is connected with talking about pain, with talking about how we feel and how can we heal. So there, the language, but also the metaphor of arts and, connection, and connect with nature within us, but also with nature as part of that. It's quite important for that process. And the way that I have been working from my, my space of of work is developing strategies for, work with communities for transitioning from these extractive models to regenerative models, where regenerative models make sense. And it's a little bit the thing that Gerardo Ceballos talked about previously in the Latin American session. Working with the rural communities in the south of Mexico, and sharing with them a kind of awareness of the importance of moving in that regard, but hearing them from their knowledge and their experiences of living in these spaces, of how we move to that transition. And that has been connected to including all levels of government on that process. So building networking is crucial, it's critical. Conflict resolutions and conflict transformation is also crucial. But definitely we have to work in our inner self to find us and connect to the other, with the others, meaning our communities and nature. Yeah.
So you're saying that we must learn how to leverage our inner development for our outer development, and that it is crucial. You cannot separate these. Excellent. Thank you so much, Alejandra. May I ask Anton, would you like to speak into that a little bit? What are, looking at leadership, and what are some of those things that we could be addressing there that hopefully helps us do this better?
Yeah, thank you, Ferial. So the first thing which is coming, like collective decision making and some collective processes as a healing container for our shadow, for our inner development and all of that stuff. So then more those hubs will be in our habitats and our cities, villages, etc. So it will be like a filter of something polluted and dirty to clarify this water in all of different aspects. And at the same time, I recognize that inner development is also a very complex term, and it can include only kind of awakening, but right now we are facing a complexity, and complexity is also part of inner development. And I happy that as LCE we have this Future Leaders project for young people, because education is the root part of our impact, because all those challenges are not possible to deal while we are living right now in our lifetime. So yeah, this is important. And in the other hand, the complexity means that we need to understand that also these huge, large systems and technologies and like this artificial intelligence and all different kind of technologies, which on the one hand destroying our planet and on the other hand trying to make some benefits. It's also kind of complex challenge, and our inner development could be that complex to understand, include, and transcend those kind of things, not just put it somewhere else and let's back to the forest. It does not work. So we can go to the forest and then somebody will come and cut it by a robot or something like that. But yeah, that's why education is like a rooted point, and conversation is a filters, and complexity is must have thing. So yeah, we are dealing very complex kind of stuff, and I'm at one point in our conversation I feel that we are very ambitious, and it's really important thing to make an impact to governance level. cities, of municipalities, etc. Because we can go to our inner development, we can develop our communities, etc. But if we not have this support from systematic level of outer world, our activities will be not that effective, you know, and we can build the communities, etc. But then maybe 5 kilometers away, they begin huge construction which will destroy everything. So we will be happy here, but in 10 kilometers from us will be something crazy stuff. And this is another part of complexity of how we build this kind of stuff. And from my experience, those kind of things like construction, real estate development, or city building, etc., it's super complex kind of stuff. That's why not much people go deeper in there, because we need to deal with those complexity. Because there is nothing or something destroyed, then we should create, to use our imagination, how it will be like that. Get all of those licenses, etc., master plans, etc., make some financial plans, etc., and start building, they face those challenges, then it exists. So it's very complex kind of stuff. And if we want to make impact to there, we need to be more complex of that, and how to bring our heart and soul to this kind of project. This is a huge challenge, and I feel that we are very short amount of people, of those people who are trying somehow to deal with this in our GMA program and other program to make an impact of those complex systems. And yeah, our inner development and those circles like this help all of us to inspire each other, and be happy to help both of us in this important thing. Yeah.
Thank you, Anton. So I often describe, you know, what you were describing there, because you were just looking at the real estate, but there's so many other aspects, right? There's kind of nested challenges we talked about earlier. It feels like when you're throwing a whole ball of yarn in the sky and it drops on the floor and it's all entangled. And the more you pull this side, the more that side goes. You know, so it's kind of like this game we play. We're just pulling it ends. And I think what you talk about when you say, almost raising that consciousness towards this complexity, it is that ability. So Lucille, I want to talk to you about that, right? That ability that we actually have and that we've tuned out of, to listen in to the more than what our brain, you know, has put together as the data we understand. But how do we feel into the field, into the energy, into the other communication that is there and available to us? So could you talk a little bit into that, Lucille?
Yeah, yeah, I've always wondered about that. Having the gift of being able to tune into energy is quite easy for me, and I've been practicing for 20 years. But I've always wondered how someone that doesn't have that gift could actually get those insights. And so I often put myself in other people's shoes, and you know, we'll walk around the town or something like that. I live in a village, live in Fishhook. I've lived in a city for 13 years in London. But how can they identify the misalignments? How can they sense into the disease, the fabric that's kind of torn apart and things like that? And I think, just to simplify it, I guess you just give you an example what I'm talking about. I went for a walk down the wetland the other day, and someone wanted to show me some secret spots. And as I was walking along, he showed me a spot of where they used to camp out. And when I looked at the wetland, there were all these plastic bottles and things like that. And I was like, oh, this is quite crazy. And this particular individual I met, he was living up in the mountain, and he was into drugs and things like that. And he came, and he's kind of getting more civilized and giving that all up. But he literally took me to a site that revealed his inner reality. And I was so shocked. I was like, wow, this soul is absolutely broken. And I realized in that moment that you didn't have to be psychic or something like that to see where the problem lay. It was literally going and becoming curious, go deep in the wetlands, walking around, observing what's out there, and getting involved and seeing what's kind of looking a bit misplaced and that doesn't look quite natural or how the divine intended it to be. So it's just, yeah, just making those observations and, you know, what can you do? What action can you actually do? So I came back home and I was like, do I just moan about that or share the story? And I was like, well, no, what can I physically do to make a difference? So I thought, okay, well, let me turn this into a community project and get all the business people involved and collect a whole lot of prizes, get the youth involved and say, listen, yeah, we go to these sites having a big cleanup and whoever fills the black bag with the most stuff gets a prize, and then advertise it. But actually, you know, allowing people to recognize that that is not correct, that something like that is not part of our true nature. But we can go in and get involved and participate and actually get encouraged by it and enthusiastic about the whole action of transforming something that looks diseased. And in that way, we can actually work from the outside in. The more we do that, we start actually transforming that inner reality and changing that inner narrative. So yeah, it's just
I like that because you're saying that the inner, it is an inner job, but sometimes the outer world, it makes it easier when you're living in a situation where there's more possibility for the inner world to be also affected. So it also is the reason why we have to make our outer worlds more and more conducive, because then it also affects the inner worlds. Beautiful, Lucille. And you said something about you've been practicing this for 20 years. Now, practicing was the key there. You say you have a gift, but I think the gift is there because you have spent time honing that. And I wonder if this is also for leaders in cities, right? Is it about honing your skill, your intuition? Because is it something we all have? I would say yes, because I look at the other animals. They scurry away when certain things are going to happen because they have honed their skill to feel into is there. And I mean, I certainly, you know, use mine on many occasions, and I think that it's just there. But am I practicing it enough? Am I focusing in on understanding that communication rather than only the stuff that I think of as human communication? Right, but maybe
I'd just like to add something to that, because I do believe that every individual on the planet has a gift, and our gifts are different. And I think with regards to, I mean, one way I was able to hone my gift was to just work and align all those inner conflicts. And every single time I did, I had more access to my gift, and the container became bigger and bigger and bigger until it became almost unlimited. But I just carried on working. And I do believe that with leaders, this is absolutely the place that needs to be worked on the most. They need to work on those traumas, realign their beliefs, or let go of those limiting beliefs, and really become aligned to their authentic self, which is their divine blueprint. And I realized that when you do so, that's when your gift, your natural, I don't know, talent comes through, the thing that you've been honing your whole life. But it's that gift that you're meant to serve with. You know, it might be, you know, insights or things, but for each leader, it's different. But I think the collective consciousness of that city, they chose that person because they're able to serve with that particular gift. And I think when a leader is so aligned to that gift unapologetically, their teams need to kind of form a resonance to that leader's authentic self. And it needs to kind of start with that unified field, because then, you know, if they lead in the city, you know, everything gets into resonance with that leadership. And I just think that has a lot more impact.
Beautiful. And I know just in our own relationship, how many times you have actually done that for me. And I've seen my own self, you know, expand in my consciousness about who I am and how I am to show up as a leader. So firstly, I want to say thank you, Lucille, because off and on you're doing that for me. Secondly, just yes, I hear you. And I hope that we would get to a place where at some point leaders would really recognize that. And especially leaders that are already impassioned, already wanting to make that difference in the world, and realizing there is still shadow work we have to do. There is still constant alignment. And so, yes, I shall be seeing you soon again, Lucille. Thank you. And yes, Susie, please speak into that. Thank you.
Lucille, you speak my language with leadership there. Absolutely. And I keep going back to the inner work. When you learn and remember how to lead yourself, you can lead anything. It becomes, when you're aligned with your blueprint, with the gift, we're all gifts, the gift we are, it's a magnetic field, and your vibe attracts your tribe. So absolutely everything starts coming together in the resonance of the internal world that is now giving off this frequency. And I do believe we're in the largest awakening in humanity, with humanity, ever. We are consciousness. We have had to have the shadow. We have had to have the dysfunction, the dis-ease. Everything that is happening now is the narrative of an energy field of consciousness outside of itself and away from its blueprint. You can observe from an inner world of growth. You can now observe it without reacting. You can observe it with absolute, oh my gosh, this is my teacher. This is what I can now gauge of how can I be the difference. And in my journey of disconnecting from the city world to go to a small city and a village, was my inner world disconnecting from my dis-ease to come back into my connection with nature, into my ease, and into the wisdom and clarity of my mission of leading myself. And that is in every single activity that I do, how I breathe, how I connect with others by connecting with myself. Everything is from the inside out, the resonance, how compassionate I am, how empathetic I am, how kind I am. Everything is on myself first, that I had forgotten, that I had drained myself and scattered myself and put my energy in so many other lives, with my own family, with businesses. You give so much of yourself that you become dis-ease. How many people are sick because they are so widely spread that they have forgotten their own trunk, their own roots, their own tree. So the journey of the inner world to observe and use the outer world to observe and be the teacher is bringing a new leadership in. Every single one of us that is doing work and leading ourselves are the future leaders of the world, because people come naturally. They naturally see the difference. And by you being the difference is a frequency. You're leading with your heart. We're coming out of the ego mind. We're coming out of the illusion. We are grounding into heart space. And we are speaking through love. We are acting through love. We are creating through love. Our blueprint, we are natural creators. And when everything slows down to that natural blueprint, nature, heartbeat, you've turned your entire system around where it comes through you. You hear the prompts. You are this magnet. Now, naturally, people come to you, doors open, opportunities that are completely aligned, which makes the change. Your little actions around home, how you live, how you show up every day for yourself, lands are just expanding, expanding, and living in an intentional community. I have witnessed it myself, from starting with myself and now seeing it grow. And it's real. And it's not even believe, I know that we're exactly where we're meant to be, to observe this chaos. And we are the difference by showing up for ourselves every day, by these groups, these individuals, leading yourself, lead thy ship, lead this ship first, this vessel. This awakening is getting to know us from this top to the bottom, multi-dimensional being. And times are magical now. And this new leader, through this vibrational blueprint of connection with nature, is exactly what the world is. It's almost like dehydrated from this compassion and empathy and kindness. And the ship is turning because individuals like us, these groups, are showing up. And naturally, by doing things for ourselves, we're doing them. It's happening. It's a ripple effect. And it is powerful. So the new ripple is love. The new economy is love. Everything is from home, the center of this universe, out. And it's beautiful to watch everyone docking in. I almost like see it as these ships docking in, mind the step. It all just has to click in. Everyone is here for an individual role for the bigger picture. Nobody steps on anybody's toes. Everyone's got their own blueprint. Everyone's got their own individual purpose. And when you're in your own sovereignty, there are no he said, she said. It's listening. You start hearing others because you can hear yourself. You're able to speak because you are able to understand other people's language. And it really is an exciting, I don't even want to say a future because there isn't a future. It is all here. We're just resonating with the change and with the new coming in. It's beautiful to watch. And it just takes us being leaders in our own worlds and our own lives in order to show up. And people are seeing it. And people are starting to get hope because of these beautiful beings popping through. Very passionate about this.
Powerful stuff, Susie, because it is not about trying to teach others a number of things at this moment. It is, are you embodying it? Are you embodying it? Because when you embody it, it's just going to come out wherever you are. That is what they're going to grab and take away, not you trying to teach stuff, right? Become it. Beautiful. Thank you. Michael, you have your hand up. Please share with us.
And how can you come after Susie? And I love what Susie and Lucille have both just said, and what it's coming from the love within us. But to put this back into a city conversation, what I'm seeing is the infinity. And what Lucille was talking about, it goes in, so there's a reflective process. If we get it right, then the world begins to reflect that back at us. And it's going to, so the expression that Lucille used was our authentic self. So if it's going out and coming back, are we actually seeing the city that we're talking about as its authentic self? Now, it's very easy to go to Portofino or Dubrovnik or Venice and get what that city's up to. And can we do that for every place on earth? Is it living its true entity? I was brought up in the smallest urban district council in Britain with 800 people. It had its own law courts. It had its own police. It had its, its own water supply. My father was the chairman. So from a very early age, I used to go and sit in council meetings. And it was either, oh, that was easy, or they're all balming, but I was right there in that kind of assembly process that said we had access to. So I know the Bettersecoed, 2 rivers, a third one coming in, 5 bridges. It grew out of its landscape and it never lost that relationship and so forth. And, it was a lovely walk up to the lake where all our water came from, all that sort of stuff. So I'm taking this back to the arrondissement in Paris. and a couple of years that I spent living in London, where Hackney is very definitely Hackney and Battersea is somewhere else entirely. And so I'm just wondering whether there's something to do with the difference that people feel in the different part of, and whether city can disaggregate in the way that countries can easily do this. America is doing it right now. The federal aspect is disappearing. The states are going to become stronger once again and so forth. We're all stepping down. And I just wonder whether London could do the same, so that there isn't actually a central London, and whether it's easier for Hackney to become an autonomous entity. But then we're looking at that level at which community in that place becomes an assembly that is self-running and autonomous. So to get the life back into the city, to give the power to the places where the life is going to be, then Putney becomes a vibrant place and Wembley becomes a vibrant, and it's that sort of, how do you take the hierarchy out of the thing? And I imagine, but I don't know any other cities. I don't know whether they have that lovely kind of division like the arrondissement in Paris, that could begin to say that's another way of looking at it. But it's getting back to that scale where I can see the authentic self of the place where I live. I could feel it, and I know what we're building with, and we can do that as a community, because it's not just some enormous group of millions of people, it's a community.
Very beautiful, Michael. So something that Liv and I got to witness earlier this year, during the summer, we went to Switzerland. And actually, I asked some questions because I mean, if any of you have ever been there, Switzerland is pretty amazing, right? I'm sitting on the boat and I'm sitting on the river, the Lake Geneva, and on every side, it's just, they used every inch of their ground, and it's all just, vineyards and produce, and the stuff I was talking about, you could just pick it off, like I said, in Romania, and a lot of Swiss cities were like that. I lived in Switzerland for a year, many years ago, and actually I also saw it wasn't city and countryside, it was this flowing I don't know, landscape. And so my friend Robert Fisher, and our president of our association in Switzerland, I talked to him for some hours before the others arrived, and I said, Robert, was Switzerland ever poor? So we had this conversation saying, yeah, during the war it was terribly poor, and there was so many problems and all this kind of stuff. We're talking now World War II and World War I and stuff like that. And I said, so what changed? So we started talking about this. We started looking up. We talked to others about it. And essentially, it was exactly what Michael said there. They shared the agency. They shared the power. So Switzerland has cantons. I think it was about 43 cantons or something like that. Lev, I might be wrong here, but they're not a huge area, right? And they've divided into cantons, and they have mayors for their different cities and towns. And we actually went to visit this beautiful little town called Liechtenstadt. And it was wonderful. So I'll maybe get Lev to tell you more about Liechtenstadt and what we saw there.
In Switzerland.
Yes, we saw and experienced there. But the thing about it is, they have issues too, believe you me. But the thing about it is, there are some things we could learn, and there are some things we could take into other spaces. And there are other, I mean, I probably think Cape Town and Mexico City could teach Switzerland and other places some stuff too, because there are things, if I really start to talk about it, we can unpack. There's many things in Cape Town that I know I cannot find in Switzerland. And, because there's something about what we've done in Cape Town with certain things that is beautiful. So I think every place has something that it can offer. But just going there and listening to what you've said, Michael, for can you do that, right? Moving of the power. And I saw them investing in that. And I mean, their country is probably one of the best run in the world. And because it gives more agency to locals to lead. And so, Lev, maybe you could share a little bit with us about Liechtenstein and what we witnessed there.
Let me be very brief so other people could speak, but maybe 1 or 2 minutes. So we were quite amazed. We had our leadership retreat in Switzerland, and after visiting Zurich and Bern, we came to Canton St. Gallen in the eastern part. And I also visited on invitation of the local sort of mayor, a city called Lichtensteig. Lichten is light and Steig is a staircase, I believe, in German. And we were totally sort of, blown away by what we saw there, because the city is very small. It's 1,800, maybe 1,900 now, maybe 2,000 inhabitants. And the city faced major crisis because it was center of textile and other sort of, industries, which maybe 20 years ago moved to, to Asia. And so they had a major decline, and they found this inner agency and inner resources as a community. And there was a specific catalyst for this process, but the community raised up and created all the amazing changes. So we often talk in the Living City circles about city being alive, vibrant, thriving, etc. And it always comes from the people, of course, in addition to nature in the background, sort of. So what we discovered there, that the city was in the decline, the whole ambience and mood was very sort of down. People didn't really believe in themselves to be able, so young people were moving to large cities, St. Gallen, Zurich, etc. And then something changed. It wasn't an asteroid, it wasn't sort of, any external circumstance. It was one of the citizens in the city who took this, we call it authentic leadership position. We're coming from inside out. So he was working as a clerk in the local, city hall. For years, he was relatively young at the time, maybe 31 years old, and he participated in the elections of the local, for the local mayor. It's called the president of municipality over there, I believe. And so he won, and he came with this, passion and vision for the future of city as a community of citizens, not just as an administrative, governance type of structure. And this spark that this particular person brought to the community, it really launched a major movement where people started to come along and really bring their energy and open up their talents, collaborating and so on and so forth. And so it took them about 7 to 8 years to move from the position of really deep depression, economic, social, cultural, etc., to a point where today we faced a really thriving city, flourishing, very upbeat, beautiful. Economy is coming back, people are moving back, etc., etc. So it manifested in stone, in architecture, in the way people communicate on the streets, and many, many other things. So a true transformation, right? We often talk about transformation and evolution. So they did it. Artists coming in from all across Switzerland and other countries, they move there and become residents of the city. So they came up with some creative, city development strategy. But it all became, an outcome of one person bringing the spark and other people lighting up their spirits and then collaborating, of course, for several years. So it was an amazing, amazing story, which we want. And there are other, of course, stories like this across the world. So we want to bring those sparkles and help people around the planet to feel it and to manifest it in their communities as well. Thank you.
So we had the pleasure of the town secretary called Nadia, who took us around throughout this little city, and you saw the shops returned. At some point we were laughing because you know in the old movies when they have those little tumbling things when the town is dead in the West, those tumblers. She said literally it felt like that in their city, and now it's vibrant. And we saw all these projects. I mean, in that small space, they have 35 vibrant projects, of which she, for example, is leading one of them. We were sitting inside of one of her, the results of her project, right? And so what I'm saying is like most of the citizens in that town get involved with a project, and they reviving their city. So it's not the mayor. And I got to interview Nadia as well. So those of you who'd like to hear that interview, I can send it to you, but she definitely spoke about how they are now responding. So I think there's hope there. When we listen to them, we realize, wow, what an example we could take back into a lot of our work and what we do to inspire us in our places, in our cities. It's possible. Yeah, because they did it. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people around the world who are doing it. And hey, could we do that? I mean, I recently heard of a project in Brazil where some doctors and nurses and medical people came together, and they have such issues with medicines and, people over medicating and things like that. And they saw this They came together and they said, hey, could we do this differently? They started planting herbs and certain things, and they started using this to heal their community. And what is happening then now is amazing. People are starting to come off around the world and see what these doctors and nurses and people are doing, and they're healing with more than just chemical medicines. They are understanding that medicine is your food and food is your medicine, right? So saying that there are pockets of these dynamic things happening all around the world that I think we can now learn from. It is our moment to go and observe and say, ooh, could we adapt that for where we are? So that said, I want to very quickly invite Gavin. Gavin, earlier on, we talked about stories, right? So I want you to talk about the cities. Give us a little take on what you think about as we look forward to changing and to transforming our places where we live and play and eat and so on. What are those stories? Is it important to look at those stories and look at the ones we're telling, and how does it help us to look at that?
Sorry, I feel very, very early in the morning. My brain is definitely not entirely awake. For me, I guess it's my passion in life. The living stories and stories we live. To me, is very much everything. We are a product of the stories we tell ourselves, and we are co-players in a story that is unfolding. And I guess I've not really given cities much focused thought in the past. It's such an important area, and the advent of Living Cities Earth is a story that is unfolding that I'm very glad to have caught from the beginning, and I really look forward to seeing where it goes, because better cities would just change our reality in so many positive ways. It's hard to sort of spin out and imagine. It is I guess a slice of reality changing, and to kind of imagine a world in which our cities are vital and alive and infused with consciousness, with love, with creativity. It would just change the entire human experience so fundamentally that it like, as I just feel into that, I kind of like spin and go, wait, where do I start, or how does one try and encapsulate that? But I think it just, I come back to, I guess, what I said earlier, because humans just are the gift or the problem, and often we're both. But a world in which our consciousness is raised such that in a concentrated area, it would be overflowing with gifts. It would be something that would be so nourishing, that would be such an adventure, that every day you'd kind of step out your door, and what could unfold or what would unfold just by meeting this person or that person in the hustle and bustle. For me, it would be just a never-ending box of surprises and magic and exploration. And it's something I look forward to seeing, because I do think we're on our way there. And I'm sorry. My brain feels very, very foggy at the moment. I need I woke up. I need a couple of hours to kind of get my engine going. But it's something I think that will surprise us. I think that's what I look forward to most, is the adventure of it.
And I think so much beautiful material in cities where you can start to tell those different stories when you're looking for them, right? So thank you, Gavin. I want to take this last bit of our conversation and just do a round with all of us. So I think it's important to talk about these things. I think it's important to try to understand what we are part of, and where we're heading, and how the possibilities that exist. But equally, I think it is important to move to action. I think it's important for us to go and say, what can we do? I like what Lucille said. She walked around there and she said, okay, I'm going to do something about this. I can't just be feeling into the energy over here. That was important. And you started there, Lucille, and you started by, listening and all this kind of stuff. But then you went into, okay, I want to respond. to this environment, because I think that I can do something about it. So I'd like to invite each of you very quickly. If you don't need to share anything, don't share it, right? For those of you who are working on something specific right now that you can offer to leaders from cities, to various different people who perhaps listen to this later, or even in this room right now, right? I'd like you to just talk a little bit about what those are, and how people could perhaps access them. And I'd like to say hi to Daryl there. It's really great to see you,
Hello.
Daryl.
Hello. It's good to see you, Ferial.
Hi, Daryl.
Yes, hey, Anton. It's good to see everybody. I've been sort of checked out, but I'm gradually trying to plug back in. But
Awesome.
yeah, but to respond to your question, I'm actually in the Yosemite National Park right now, and so I might lose my connection. So let me just say, I have worked the last 4 months on an initiative called Building Clean Green Communities. And in so doing, I did a series of webinars and live events kinds of things. And the big takeaway for me for that was I got government, business, youth, a whole bunch of different constituencies together, culminated in a festival of a kind. Not a festival we put on, but we participated in. And the takeaway from it was that the county office of sustainability called me and would like us to help them implement their comprehensive climate action plan, which is an initiative that was funded by the federal government, even though they're fearful that the Trump administration may cut their funds, but they got it. They got the money. And so that's what I've been doing. I've been completely immersed in that. So I'm just not coming up for air. Anyway, it's good to plug in. The perspective that LCE gives me really is a force multiplier when I'm on the stage and interviewing these different people, because I know in the back of my mind, I'm plugged into an international organization that's doing stuff on a global level. And that always gives me another bit of oomph when I'm on the stage and trying to facilitate dialogue. Anyway, I just wanted to weigh in and say that.
Daryl, now that you're coming up for air, right? Lev and I are going to be ringing the number this week, because we need you to tell what you're just working on there. We're working on the Global Mayors Academy, so we're going to need your voice in there, right?
Absolutely. So, count me in. Count me in.
Thank you, Daryl.
I owe Anton a call back too. I'll be in touch, brother.
We were planning on ringing you anyway. So thank you, and enjoy Yosemite.
Okay.
Lev, did you put your hand up then? So you go next for us to share.
No, I just wanted to say hi to Daryl.
Okay, but you might as
hey,
well.
Lev.
Right? So you can pick up from where Daryl's now left off and start talking a little bit about Global Mayors Academy and Future Leaders Project that we're doing in Living Cities.
It's amazing. Yeah. Again, I will try to be short. Again, apologize for my English. And Daryl and several speakers actually before mentioned love, LOVE. And it's amazing how transformative, the power of love is in our, of course, personal lives and, community, city level and broader sort of ecosystems. So when we had with Alexander Laszlo and many of us this Earth Day Summit a couple of years ago, we had maybe 92 speakers across several days. And the outcome of those, smart, sort of intelligent, wise people speaking to each other and in groups for three days, consecutive days, came up to this one word, love. That love is not only what you need, but also the power which transforms our experience, however difficult, challenging, etc. it could be. And this is, I guess, my sort of final concluding remark here in our beautiful circle, that challenges will be abound in our personal, social, and ecosystemic sort of, lives and different levels. But if we approach everything internally and externally from this position of unconditional love, and what beautifully Susie, I think, said this God blueprint or something, divine blueprint, I think when we're in touch with this, our deeper reality, right, it's amazing what we can do individually, collectively, and again, as a humanity overall. So thank you for our beautiful conversation today.
So Liv, you didn't tell me yet about the Global Mayors Academy, because I'm trying to share that with them.
Well, Global Mayors Academy is just, a formal way to bring this love to city communities and city leaders worldwide. So we're basically bringing world-class faculty, practitioners from across the world, from Americas, from Europe, Africa, and Asia, to share stories, to share tools, to share frameworks, and also to support real-world project implementation during this 6 months online sort of course with the graduation event in Liechtenstein in Switzerland next summer. All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Liv. So if any of you are interested to participate and join us in there, please do. Alejandra, was that you putting your hand up? Awesome. Please share.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. I have been working for the last year here in Canada and in Mexico with students and with communities, implementing a lab which works at head, heart, and hands. That's our basic way of transmitting how it works. We acknowledge that information and there is important, but we also know that understanding the needs of the communities, we have to connect from there, hold a space for hearing each other, and hearing each other not from our differences, but as a systemic community, to understand that the problem of one is a problem of everybody. So it's about finding solutions for the benefit of all. In that way, when we are talking about head, heart, and hands, it's about also working at individual level, but to collective level for the benefit of the ecosystem. And when we work with young people and we hold these spaces where they can be listened to and where they have a place, using tools like the Talking Circle here in Canada, they really appreciate that. And it's like a place for revealing that they can do something and it's relevant and they have a role within the system. So yes, it has been a very nice experience of finding that the power of finding our inner self and the connection with others. Yep.
Beautiful, Alejandra. So at some point, if you can take down, I'll put my number in the chat. We're also running something called the Future Leaders Project, which I think will be very beautiful with what you are sharing right now. And so maybe we can see if there's some collaboration there that we can do and expand what we do together. So that'd be really great. And for anybody else, right, that is interested in that. I've just put some information about the Mayor's Academy in the chat as well. So is there anyone else that wants to share something that they're working on that's also going to be useful for anyone listening? Anyone else? Please, Lucille.
Please.
And then I know you've got stuff, Susie, because you were talking about working with leaders individually. So please do share that as well. We'll have Lucille, then we'll have Michael, because he put his hand up, and then we'll have Susie. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Susie and I do something similar. Yeah, so my focus, and I've developed 2 programs, which has taken me 20 years to do, called the Truth Model, but it's divided up into 2 sections. So primarily working with leaders or change makers and really getting into, what are the programs that they're ready to complete on, there's any conflicts that they just need to sort of shift beyond, but also identifying what their true consciousness is. So they are fully aligned and they're not doing things that they aren't meant to be doing. So I work on that. But then I also move into energetic dimensions. So I align, first of all, the leader with integrate all the energies in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th dimension, and then bring all of those dimensions into a unity consciousness. So they are then operating our unity consciousness, coming through their authentic self. And then, as I said, as I mentioned before, I will then look at their teams. And I've just started to run a program where I will do a group meditation, where I'll do kind of psychic hypnosis with the energy to bring that field into some cohesive sort of unity consciousness with the leader. So that's my primary focus now. I also I'm really interested in, you have that working, operating really well, but tuning into the project or the city and things like that, and to really identify what is the purpose of that city. What is the consciousness of the city, and where is the city wanting to evolve, or the project? And then I do a kind of a energetic evaluation and go, okay, so this is the benchmark of where the city or the organization or the project is at the moment, and how to move it to this next evolutionary step. And what is the specific purpose of that particular leader? So everything kind of matches up and is attainable. So it's not just talk, but let's actually kind of do it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And actually, Lucille, so I know when we speak about energy, often people go, oh, it's in the woo-woo field. But it's been interesting for me in relating to you that it's been very practical, actually. It's not been woo-woo stuff, but very practical. So just to know that, please, all of you, Alejandra, Lucille, Lev, could you put contact details and stuff into the chat as well, so that if anybody wants to connect, we can do that. Hi, Sarah, for joining us. Susie, did you want to go? Oh, it was Michael next, and then Susie. Please, Michael, share.
Pressing the wrong button. So it was just a quickie to tie us back to the beginning, because you started by saying, why don't we have fruit trees growing down the roadsides? Well, I'm one of the founders of Sustrans, which is our national construction for the alternative road system, which we plant. So we build paths for disabled, bicycles, children, and they have apple trees. And the very first route had rhubarb down it. I don't know why we started with rhubarb, but yeah, we can go all the way around the world with edible greenways.
Awesome. And we do have some of the Sustrans ones in Scotland too.
Just yes, I built them.
You did, right? Thank you so much.
Yes,
we have wonderful bike paths. I have you to thank, Michael. Awesome. And Susie, and so Michael, we will be talking to you as we talk to cities. You see, they're going to have to be doing a lot of that stuff. So please, you're going to be speaking to us in the GMA. Lev, please take note. Anton, thank you. Susie, would you like to share? We have three.
Okay, so I'll be very quick, because there's so many projects that I have expanded into in my new community, and one of them has been something really special and close to my heart, is a woman's circle. And the village have actually approached me after seeing what I do online. Would I hold the space to bring in the diverse little community of women, which is a real bridge, because it's a real mixture of everything, and how can we get together? So this is a new project of mine in community, which is very dear to me, of the power of bringing these women together and the communication, and how we can be the difference and share our fruit trees and fruit and vegetables and be the change together. So that is my new project, which is a real honor that they've approached me to say, we see you, can you do this? And I'm like, amen, like, thank you for showing up. So communication, connection, and really starting at ground level is the change. So yeah, I'm happy and excited to see how it mushrooms.
Awesome. Susie, please put your details in the chat. And absolutely, I encourage you, whoever is going over to South Africa, go and visit Susie in Hogsback and go away with the fairies, right, Susie? Because I think that's what some of what you're doing is called, going away with the fairies. It's an actual place. It's not just fairies. So I think at this point, I'd like to say, thank you so much for your contributions to this conversation. I've enjoyed listening to each of you. I've enjoyed kind of unpacking this conversation with you. It was a 2-hour conversation, and you stayed all the way through, even when Gavin's brain was wanting to sleep. And for most of us, for some of you, it's morning, right? But for most of us in this parts of the world, it's now 3 a.m. in the morning for me, which means it's 4 a.m. for Gavin and Lucille. So I think we probably need to go get a bit, and Susie, I think we probably need to go get a bit of sleep right now. But I do want to say thank you so much. It was great. We're at the top of the hour now, and I'd like to hand it over. Is it to Sarah that I need to hand it over? I know it's to 8-1, right? So Sarah, please, the floor is yours. Thank you.